Ronna McDaniel, the chairwoman of the Republican National Convention and serial loser, publicly faltered and stumbled when confronted with some very harsh truths about her party's political priorities by none other than the Fox Propaganda Network. Intrigued? Then click that like and subscribe and enjoy the video. So it is May 1st, and we are rapidly approaching the halfway point of 2023, which means the 2024 election cycle is rapidly approaching as well. President Biden has formally announced that he's running for re-election. Donald Trump has been in full campaign mode for months. Ron DeSantis may be running to rival Trump, but he hasn't formally announced, and it seems like whatever aspirations and momentum he had for a potential 2024 presidential bid are on life support. But anyway, we are moving in that direction, and as a lefty, as a proud Democrat, as somebody who wants to see the Republican Party fail, it is true that we have certain struggles, right? We have certain headwinds blowing against us. President Biden is still relatively unpopular. And there is, again, the colossal asymmetry of expectation that everybody seems to contribute to. It's not just conservatives, but independents and liberals and progressives as well, where everybody just expects more out of Democrats than Republicans politically. Republicans are graded on a curve in this country. They can kick back and say, oh, government don't work, and then not do anything, and then get reelected, even though they're the reason that government doesn't work. It's just this beautiful, it's an amazing racket that the Republican Party has created, and the asymmetry of expectations has followed. It's very frustrating. But we do have some advantages. Joe Biden is still the incumbent president. That still counts for something. Again, Republicans tend to squander this advantage because they are so terrible at governing. But usually the incumbency matters. Okay, so that's one advantage. Another advantage is that Ronna McDaniel, Mitt Romney's niece, is still the chairwoman of the Republican National Convention. So that means she is nominally in charge of overseeing the re-election bids or the elections of Republicans, including Donald Trump. And this woman has a phenomenal win-loss record for Democrats, Like, she sucks at her job. As a matter of fact, many conservatives and Republicans have actively complained and demand that she be resigned or that she resign or be removed, including Ben Shapiro. Because, again, like, the Ronna McDaniel alphabet is 26 L's. The only letter is L because it's L after L after L after L. Donald Trump lost the 2020 presidential re-election on her watch. Republicans lost the Senate on her watch in 2020, including in Georgia, which was a profoundly red state once upon a time. Ronna McDaniel, on her watch, they lost the Wisconsin Supreme Court race. That's a major one. And then they underperformed hilariously in the 2022 midterms. So again, her alphabet, all L's. But she's still nominally in charge, and that's great news for Democrats because if past is prologue, and if the future indication of future performance is past performance, that's great for us because that means this woman has a bias towards losing. She almost has like a losing fetish. Well, she was on the Fox Propaganda Network. She was on one of the Sunday shows. Chris Wallace is no longer there. Shannon Bean took his place, and she's pretty good. And she confronted Ronna McDaniel here with some pretty harsh truths about her party's political priorities. I want you to hear this exchange and see how she responds.
I want to quickly ask you about cultural issues because we've got some new polling on this. On the issue of trans issues, polling higher is people are more worried, voters are, about attacks on trans families than they are about trans people competing in sports. When asked about issues involving schools, the top concern you can see here was book banning. Now there's word major donor to the GOP, Peter Thiel, is unhappy and is going to hold his money out because he doesn't like these debates about abortion and trans and bathrooms and all of that. Are you worried that these cultural issues are hurting the GOP?
Well, one, the Democrats are using this word book banning. You're seeing it a lot. You saw it on Biden's launch. That's a lie. There isn't book banning. What Republicans are doing are protecting our children and parental rights and saying 5-year-olds shouldn't be reading sexually explicit material. Ron DeSantis went in front of cameras and read some of these books, and the news stations had to go away because the material was so explicit. But now we know their game plan, right? We can have a conversation about issues, and really what it is about is parents should have a say in what's happening with our kids. And I think most Americans support that, but it's good to know the Democrats' playbook, and we're going to push back on that, especially coming from a Democrat Party that is banning freedom of speech, that is canceling people, that is destroying your life if you don't think with their orthodoxy. This is a Democrat Party who is saying if you think outside of the box of everything we are dictating to you, we will make you lose your job, we will destroy you. So they're banning people. They're banning freedom of speech and freedom of thought. Republicans are protecting children.
Okay, so notice how she avoided answering entirely. The fact of the matter is that even the Fox Propaganda Network's own polling indicate, listen, you are overplaying your hand radically on these culture war issues. You are leaning too far into them. And of course they will, right? Because they can't stand on actual political record. Republicans suck on the economy. Republicans suck on social issues. The past 40 years, as we've discussed again and again and again, are Democratic administrations cleaning up the messes that are left behind by Republicans. When it comes to governing, the Republican Party is objectively the inferior party. So what do? They lean into propaganda. They lean into culture war issues. Except now the polling indicates they're leaning in too much. They're overplaying their hand. They're being too aggressive. This is the issue. Just a couple of things. Number one, as we discussed about before, trans athletes in sports, that is such a niche issue that it would be ridiculous to try to pin national elections on something that would come up like 1 in a million. 1 in a million situation. But again, that's all they have. The book banning, well, if you look, Ron DeSantis has tried to pull, I mean, my God, they're pulling like AP, African-American curricula out of high schools and colleges and things like that. They've tried to ban books about that discuss slavery and the horrors of slavery in the United States. There's quite a bit of censorious book banning coming out of Florida in particular, but also just aggressive attempts in red states, period. And then for her to cast aspersions about how the Democrats are banning freedom of speech, what the hell is she talking about? Where? First Amendment's still around. Where are Democrats banning freedom of speech? Canceling you really want to do? The Republican Party, the conservative, the right-wing element in this country have been censorious from the beginning. The Hays Code back in the early 19th century where you couldn't show certain things on TV, that was the religious right. Joseph McCarthy, who accused everyone of being a communist and tried to get everybody fired, that was a right-winger. You don't have to go that far back. You can go even in modern history. The Dixie Chicks getting yanked off airwaves because they criticized President Bush, that was the right-wing Republican Party. Bill Maher's first show, he was canceled, politically incorrect, was canceled because he criticized the Bush administration. Donald Trump is censorious as all get out. He supported, he tried to get Colin Kaepernick kicked out of the NFL. It was his right-wing MAGA cult that tried to, boycott the NFL to pressure them to fire Colin Kaepernick for expressing his freedom of speech. That's canceling. Gillette, Target, whatever. Kathy Griffin, whoever. The right wing cancels as much as anybody. Ron DeSantis has fired people left, right, and center for, differing from his political views. His war on Disney right now is an act of attempting to cancel Mickey Mouse because this corporation expressed public opposition to a piece of legislation. I thought Republicans thought that, corporations are people too, and they can have their opinions and blah, 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 and diversity of thought, except when you criticize a Republican notion, then you get banned. Donald Trump is the most censorious person out there, infinitely more censorious than Joe Biden. So this is revisionist history. It's pathetic. I love the fact that how she ducked the issues. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see how she proceeds from here because they're going to have to pull back on how they've been playing their hand. And they may have to try to campaign on their record, which all I can say is good luck, Republicans. Good luck.